Hi, my name is Leanna. I used to be an engineer, but now I'm an actress and a personal trainer. I quit my corporate job 2 years ago, and ever since then, I've been living in LA, basically living my dream life. Since my corporate job, I haven't had a boss, I haven't had to request sick time, I haven't had to ask for permission to take a vacation or a day off. I've been living a life of freedom, basically, and I get a lot of questions on how I did this. And also, why? Because full disclosure, I'm not rich and I make way less money now than I used to. However, I'm living and I'm happy. My bills are paid and I'm happy. And I did it myself. No one is supporting me or my lifestyle. No one is giving me money. I don't have a sugar daddy. I don't have an OnlyFans, okay? So I started this channel in the hopes of reaching those who want to live their dream life and pursue their soul's calling. And they're doing something that they don't necessarily want to do right now. Does that sound like you? Because that used to be me. My question for you is, how much is your happiness worth to you? Is it worth less than money? Because if it's worth less than money, then I'm not the person that you want to listen to. For me, my values place happiness above all else. Happiness and well-being and health above all else. And I'm not saying that I've resigned to a lifetime of poverty. I'm just saying I don't have a lot of money right now. In fact, the field that I'm in, it has uncapped income potential. So even though I don't have a lot of money right now, which is just something that I wanted to be fully transparent about, I could have a lot more money one day. And that is very different from a corporate job where your salary is your salary. And no, you don't get a raise even though the top execs just went to the Bahamas for a week. I know how scary it is to make that jump and just go for what it is that you want because there's no blueprint. The reason that it's so hard to leave corporate is because it's so comfortable. You get a salary, you get health insurance, you get vision, you get dental, you're taken care of. But if it's killing you from the inside, if it's eating you alive and every day you wake up and you're miserable, what kind of life is that? So if you're intrigued and you want to hear more, the first thing I want you to do is to throw away the word realistic. Okay, there is no realistic. The word realistic is just self-limiting beliefs wrapped up in a pretty little package and disguised as practicality. Acting is one of those unrealistic things, and yet there are actors, and yet I'm an actor. So how is that unrealistic? Nothing's unrealistic. There are a million ways to make money. You don't have to be in a 9 to 5. You have a choice. There is always a choice. And I've made mine. And I've been living the results of my choice, the consequences of my choice for the last 2 years. Believe me when I say I understand the value of money very deeply. I come from an immigrant family where my dad was always talking about money, always reminding us that money didn't grow on trees. That scarcity mindset, it was passed down to me. There has been a lot of anxiety around money and a lot of attachment to it that I've had to actively try to dismantle because it's just holding me back. Everybody's individual relationship to money is so complicated and deep. And I will say the relationship that one has to money does dictate a lot of a person's outside actions, like regarding their career, for example. Somebody who's really attached to money and sees it as a scarce resource might have more fear around quitting a job and going to do something that they actually want to do. If you have some very solid financial obligations, like paying a mortgage, or you have goals like you want to buy a house by a certain time, or you have kids to take care of, or something like that, you might not like what I have to say. You might not want to listen to what I have to say. And that's okay. I respect that. I know this isn't for everybody. There are always going to be a million different reasons not to do something, but the one reason to do it is your joy and your well-being and your happiness. So how much is this worth to you? If it's not worth that much, then stay in your corporate job. It doesn't matter. But if this is worth risking it all for, and you don't want to waste your life being miserable every single day, then you have to go for it. Then you should go for it. So today I just mainly wanted to come on here and tell my story of what happened, what got me leaving engineering and leaving this cushy corporate job to pursue something that others would perceive as a pipe dream. And of course, I'm gonna talk about the how, but I'm gonna save that for the next video. Today, I wanna just talk about the what and the why. And I think this will explain some of the how, because when there's a will, there's a way. And there was a very deep will. I just wanna be clear that this channel isn't going to be how to get rich quick so that I can quit my job, how to win the lottery or anything like that, because I'm not rich myself. I'm not a money guru, okay? But it's about finding the courage within you to do what it is that you don't have the courage yet to do. It's about changing your mind, changing the rigid belief systems that keep you stuck, that no longer serve you. All that just so you can go full force at your dreams and live the life that you truly deserve. So if that sounds good, then please give me a like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Okay, so the story goes a little bit like this. Once upon a time, I was a little girl. And when I was a little girl, I was very creative. I always liked to draw. I always liked making up songs and just expressing myself artistically. But as I grew up and became a teenager, the reality that I was an Asian hit me. And for an Asian in the Bay Area, what that oftentimes means is that you are surrounded by a bunch of peers who look exactly like you and come from similar socioeconomic backgrounds as you do. And everybody is talking about going into STEM, becoming an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. And you just want to make your parents happy. You just want to make them proud. And so very quickly, I was introduced to the concept of practical career choices versus impractical ones. So I really liked art when I was younger. And when I was an early teen, I really liked to write and I really liked to read. But my parents were probably not going to let me major in anything humanities. I was going to go to college and I was going to do something STEM because that's what you were supposed to do as an Asian kid, a good Asian kid, because that's what my parents wanted and that's what everybody around me was doing. So I felt like that was my only choice. When I was 13, my parents enrolled me in this college prep academy, and there it was basically SAT boot camp. I had to take an SAT diagnostic test for 3 hours every single week, multiple times a week. And the thing is, I didn't even score that much. Like, I didn't even score that high on the SAT because I hated it. And my heart wasn't in it. And I feel like that goes for most people too. When your heart isn't in it, it's really hard for you to excel. I mean, there are some rare people out there who can just kind of grind through something quite unpleasant and do a good job. But when your heart is in it, it's entirely different. I would say that I'm one of those people, like if I have to, I'll do it. That's why I graduated college without failing a single class. I got my degree and everything. That's why I became an engineer, even though I hated it. But we're skipping ahead a little bit. So I was at this SAT Prep Academy, and at this SAT Prep Academy, there were counselors there, and the counselors would help you cater your high school resume so that you would be a very delicious candidate, specifically to Ivy League colleges. And if not Ivy League, then you would go to a UC at the very least. So by the time I was 13, they had me take an aptitude test. It was like a dystopian fantasy. Like, it was like Divergent or something. And the aptitude test gave me the results that I would be a good teacher or engineer and a few other things that I forget now. But engineer was definitely like at the top of the list. And I saw that and I was like, oh, that's a practical career choice. My dad's an engineer. I don't know exactly what they do, but I know that they make enough money, and that sounds good. That's like definitely one of the things that an Asian kid is supposed to be. An Asian kid like me is supposed to be. So I chose engineering when I was 13. And for the next 4 years, my college counselor had me join service clubs, join the robotics team, go to engineering summer programs. Everything was perfectly formulated and curated so that I would look like the perfect engineering candidate for the perfect school. And yes, at some point I did realize that I picked something that I was not really interested in. I would go to the robotics club and I wouldn't know how to code, and I didn't want to learn how to code. I hated that. And I didn't like it. I did the worst in AP Physics. That was my hardest class. I got a 2 on the AP exam. It was really bad. And meanwhile, I was just easily acing all my English classes without a second thought, without any stress whatsoever. I was enjoying the hell out of history. I loved AP Art, but I had to go be an engineer. And at a certain point, I think it was around age 14 or 15, I did go to my counselor and I was like, hey, I don't like engineering. Can we change it into something else? Can I maybe do writing? And she was like, no, you either have to stick with engineering or you can like do astronomy or something. But it had to be STEM. It had to be. And I was like, well, I don't care about astronomy, so I guess I'll just stay in engineering, whatever. So I didn't really have much of a choice there. And so when it did come time to apply to colleges, I got rejected from every single Ivy League. I guess I just wasn't impressive enough next to all the perfect Asian kids with the perfect GPAs. And my parents were very disappointed. I did, however, get into UCSD, which was the most prestigious school that I got into with the lowest acceptance rate at the time. And I went there because prestige mattered to me as a teenager. It mattered to my parents, even though they were sorely disappointed with that. And so throughout college, I did start to get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of me becoming an engineer. I hated my classes, but I thought it was just because I hated school. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm paying to suffer to be here, and I have all this workload and all this homework, and I'm not getting any money for it. In fact, I'm losing a lot of money, but it'll be okay. Once I actually work as an engineer, it'll be fine because I'll have so much money coming in that whatever boring work they have me do, it'll be worth it. And the thing is, even though I was stronger in the humanities, I was good enough at math. And so I was able to pass all my classes without too much struggle. I just hated it though. I hated it. It was making me miserable. And at the time I had just adopted the belief that work equals misery. And I think I got that from my dad because I saw how stressed and unhappy he was every time he came home from work. And I thought that was just normal. That was the example that I had growing up. And I didn't know any adults who actually really liked their jobs, you know? And so in my early adulthood, 18 to like 20, I really believed that work equals misery and there was no escape from that. And so I was like, okay, might as well just choose a career path that pays, that I know pays. And it gives me the glaze and the aura of being like, oh, I'm a female engineer, you know? And I knew that there needed to be more female engineers, and so I really wanted to be that. But at the end of the day, it wasn't my path. So it wasn't until fourth year that I had something change my life. Absolutely changed my life. So I don't know if you'll remember this, but back in 2016, 2017, kind of that era, Instagram was more of a place for photos and photo shoots and models and photographers. I say that loosely because everybody was kind of doing it. There were a lot of amateur photographers and a lot of amateur models, I will say. And I was one of those amateur models, and I would work with amateur photographers to do little photo shoots because that's what Instagram was about back then. And I did a lot of photo shoots specifically with this one photographer, and we'll call him Jay. So basically since like freshman year up till senior year, we would get together every once in a while and do photo shoots. And it wasn't until my senior year that he started a production company with a business partner, and he had a commercial that he had to shoot for a local restaurant. And one day, out of the blue, he just texted me and asked me if I wanted to be in this commercial because by chance, the lead actress dropped out because she was an Asian girl also, but she had dyed her hair blonde, and the client didn't want a blonde lead in the commercial. So he asked me, and I was like, sure, I'll help out a friend. Why not? Like, we've worked together before on other photo shoots. This one will just be video, so, you know, why not do something fun and help out a friend and just hang out? So I was like, sure, let's be in a commercial. Why not? So we shoot for an 8-hour day and we go to a few different locations. And at the end of the day, at the end of the 8 hours, we're sitting down, we're eating, we're chilling. Jay turns to me and he goes like, I'm so sorry, I can't pay you. You worked really hard today. It was such a long day for all of us. I really appreciate you being here. And I was like, work, hard work, long day. What are you talking about? This was the most fun that I've had in a really long time. Like, this was the most fun that I've ever had working. And it just entirely changed my perspective on work and earning money. It was like genuinely a huge mind-blowing moment for me. And that was it. Something unlocked in my brain. I looked under the rug. After that, I want to say it took me maybe almost a year to come to terms with the fact that I wanted to be an actress, that this is what I wanted to do. because I was really struggling with it. It was not an easy decision. At that point, I had already invested 4 years of my life to getting this engineering degree. Okay, and I knew my dad was expecting me to work as an engineer and follow in his footsteps. And I had $27,000 of student loan debt to pay off. It was not going to be an easy decision at all whatsoever. I didn't know anybody in LA, minus my aunt, but what I'm saying is that I didn't know anybody in the industry who could help me. I'm the furthest thing from a Nepo baby. At the time, I saw this as a very unrealistic decision, but it was a decision I had to make nonetheless. And so at this point, in terms of my degree, I knew I was gonna finish it because I was so close to finishing it. And I knew that having a degree was better than not having a degree. And I already paid all this money. I already knew I didn't want to be an engineer because I was like, I hate this shit. This is dumb. And I don't want to be miserable. During college, I had worked a few different jobs. I worked at the dining hall. I worked as an orientation leader. And lastly, I was also an instructor, a math instructor. And I enjoyed the instructing the most. Teaching is actually one of my biggest talents. And I say that with humility because I have a lot of things that I'm terrible at, but teaching is definitely one thing that I am quite good at. In fact, I actually always say that teaching is my backup career in case this acting thing doesn't work out. I love it and it fills me with joy. So a few months before graduating college, I was thinking about maybe becoming a tutor or, worst comes to worst, a receptionist. I just didn't want to be an engineer at all, point blank, period. And I was also going to do acting on the side, like dabble, dip my toe, but I didn't really know anything about the industry and I had no connections. So that was my plan at the time. And I really just wanted 1 year in LA to try. I was still living in San Diego at the time and it was the middle of the pandemic. I graduated 2020. So the job market was rough. It was non-existent. And I just wanted to move to LA at any cost and I just wanted to try it for 1 year. But I didn't know how I was gonna do it. I feel like not a lot of people talk about how difficult it is to uproot your life and move to a different city and pursue a career that isn't necessarily practical or high paying or lucrative right away. But I just needed to do it. So I graduated college and I only had a few months left on my apartment lease. And if I didn't figure out my situation in LA, I was going to have to move back into my parents' house. And that was the last thing I wanted because I did not like it there. So I distinctly remember having a moment where I just knelt down on the ground and I prayed. I prayed to the Christian God. And mind you, I am not Christian. I have never been Christian. I was not raised Christian at all. And I knelt down and I prayed to the Christian God. I was like, please, God, if you let me move to LA and try this acting thing properly for 1 year, I will become Christian. Because my idea was, if I make it in 1 year, then it's meant to be and I'll be an actress. But if I don't make it in 1 year, then I'll just resign. I'll resign and I will just accept my fate and I'll be an instructor, be a tutor, be a receptionist if I have to, work some odd part-time job, whatever. I'll go home, I'll work in my hometown, and I'll give up this dream. So I was applying for tutoring jobs in LA and I did interview at a place that really liked me. And I was like, okay, so I can work there, I can make some money and I'll have a source of income and I can eventually save up for a car. And I'm going to live with my aunt. I texted her and I was like, hey, can I please live with you? Can I stay in your extra room? It was all going to work out. What ended up happening was, because it was the pandemic, the job fell through. So I moved to my aunt's house, and at the time it was COVID still, and she didn't want me going outside at all whatsoever. So I was basically stuck in there, in that house, unable to go outside with no means of transportation at all, with no other connections in LA. I was isolated for an entire month. But I was like, you know what? This is what it's gonna have to be for now, because I really don't want to go back to my parents' house. I really, really don't. But after a month there, not being able to go outside because my aunt didn't want me to, she didn't even give me a house key or anything. She basically told me to go home because my parents wanted me home and because she didn't want me at her house anymore. And so I was like, okay, well, I moved to LA, but I didn't pursue acting in any capacity at all. Although I don't regret that month because it definitely gave me some peace. So I moved home. I moved back with my parents. And the following 8 months were the worst 8 months of my entire life. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was severely in debt with no income. And I was desperately applying to jobs and nothing was sticking. Nothing was working. And at that point, I was willing to work as an engineer if it meant that I could get out of that situation. At that time, the only thing that was really keeping me sane was I had a little press-on nail business, but it was definitely not enough to live off of. And I also had another YouTube channel that I was doing makeup videos on. And those were the only two things that really gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning because I had nothing else going on for me. And it took me about 8 months to just accept that this was my reality and stop resisting and just be like, okay, I'm living in my parents' house. I don't have any job prospects. This is what it is. And as soon as I got to that point, mentally of no longer resisting and just accepting my situation for what it was, I got a job offer to be a project engineer, a consultant, basically, for this larger staffing firm. And it was paying $30 an hour, which at the time I was so impressed by. And honestly, still, that's pretty damn good. So I was like, oh my God, this is the key to my freedom. I'm going to work this job and I'm going to earn money and I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to pursue acting. And so I remembered the acting dream and that was my focus for the next 3 years. 2.5. I worked at that company from March 2021 to September 2023. And it took me that long because I had a lot that I wanted to do and had to do before I moved to LA. The first thing I had to do was pay off my student loans because I wasn't gonna have that sitting on me. In the month that I was at my aunt's house, what did I do? I taught myself everything that I know about money. I read Investing for Dummies. I watched a bunch of different YouTubers. I learned about investment accounts, mutual funds. I learned about all that stuff. How to be financially responsible, financially literate. I just didn't have the funds yet. But I got to a point where I knew exactly what I would do if I were given $1 million. With every single dollar, what I would do with it. And so with that knowledge, I knew that the first thing I had to do before I went out and took a risk, like moving to LA and quitting my job, I had to take care of my debt first. For the first 6 months of working as a project engineer, I put the majority of every single paycheck into my student loans until I paid it all off, $27,000. Because I knew then and only then was I going to feel good enough to take a risk. Because if you have debt hanging over you, that's always going to be pounding in the back of your head. And after paying off my debt, technically, I could have moved to LA, but I chose not to. So after I paid off my debt, I was thinking about all the other things that I wanted to do, like fix my teeth and move out of my parents' house, first of all, so I could have room in my brain to think. And I was also investing in my retirement account. But most of all, I wanted to save up an LA fund. I needed a good chunk of change so that I could come here, not have to work, and be able to pursue acting full on. And I was doing a little bit of research and I was like, how much money does that look like? That number looks a little bit different for everybody. Some people say $10,000. I had read Jenna Fisher's book on acting and she said that she saved up $10,000 to make the LA move, and very quickly that $10,000 was used up. And so I was like, okay, I need more than $10,000 then, especially because she pursued acting like over a decade ago. And if $10,000 was used up faster than she could have foreseen, then I definitely need more than $10,000 in this day and age. And I definitely 100% could have moved to LA much faster if I didn't move out of my parents' house and get my own apartment in my hometown. But I needed to do that for my mental health. I needed to do that. I literally did not want to stay at my parents' house a second longer than I had to. And if I'm being completely honest, the reason for that was because I wasn't fully ready to let go of my hometown. I wasn't ready to leave the relationship that I was in at the time. I wasn't ready to leave my friendships there. My whole life was in my hometown. And honestly, I was starting to like it. At first, my corporate job was very comfortable, very easy. And it wasn't until I got promoted to a management position that I started feeling very unhappy and stressed out and bullied. And so in the beginning, it was very comfortable. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take my time because LA will always be there. And also in 2022, it was the writer's strike. So it was not an ideal time to go. And at this time, I was seeing a lot of people that I had become acquainted with in the acting industry who were doing it a lot faster than me, who were just moving to LA like on a whim. And they were willing to work waitressing or retailing jobs. And they were willing to work food service or retail, which I knew I could not do because I had that experience in college working at a dining hall, and that was the worst job that I've ever had, and I hated it. And so I knew I didn't want to be miserable. And so I knew I had to take my time and earn a little bit more money so that when I did move to LA, I could have the life that I wanted to have. But I was also like, okay, when I'm an actor, I'm gonna have to be able to go to last minute casting calls. I'm gonna have to be able to self-tape, and I'm gonna have to, when I book something, I'm gonna have to go on set. Like, how is that gonna work with a full-time 9 to 5? The answer is, it was never going to work. So I was like, okay, what can I build now that will give me a source of income for when I move to LA so that I'm not just living off my savings for a set amount of time? What can I do? And so at the end of 2021, I decided to become a personal trainer. And I knew that this was going to be the most complimentary job choice for me because of its flexibility, flexible hours, and high pay rate per hour. And so while I was working this 9 to 5, I was also studying to get my personal trainer certification, and I did that. And then at the beginning of 2022, I became a personal trainer officially, and I worked at my first commercial gym. And from the beginning of 2022, I have been working as a personal trainer. Even though since I have moved to LA, I've been working for myself. I don't work at a commercial gym any longer, but I did for a while. And so I was working 2 jobs for a good amount of time. A single mom who works 2 jobs, who loves her kids and never stops. That was super off key. But I was hustling. In 2023, specifically around April, I do recall hitting a breaking point. Because the bullying at work was getting pretty bad. And I was sent on a work trip to go to Virginia, and I just hated every second of it. And I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And at that point, I was like questioning, like, do I even still want to be an actor? Like, I've been doing this for so long. I'm an engineering project manager. Like, that's just what I do now. And I love the salary. I love the comfort. I have my own place. And do I even want to be an actor anymore? Like, can I be happy like this? And as soon as I was asking that question, the universe was like, here's your answer. And it made me absolutely miserable. One of my coworkers left, and all his projects were given to me. And that was when I was like, oh, hell no. And there was like no support whatsoever. I think I just needed to get to a point where my lazy girl job that used to be easy and straightforward just turned into something so confusing and stressful. Because originally the plan was to move to LA still working at that company because it was a remote position. So I technically could have done that if I wanted to, if I could have stayed. But the universe was like, no, you're ready to leave. So I'm gonna stress you out so that you leave. And it was around April that I just really locked in, and I was like, okay, no more discretionary purchases. Every single extra dollar that isn't going towards bills, isn't going towards rent, isn't going towards food, I'm saving into the LA fund. And I'm gonna save as much money as I possibly can, and then I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit once I hit this number. That's exactly what I did. And now, mind you, because at this point I had already been working as a trainer for a while, I did have a source of income, a secondary source of income that was pretty good. It was not bad. It was definitely not enough to be super comfortable, and I did have to dig into my savings a little bit prior to the LA move, but it wasn't that much. But definitely having a second job to lean on was definitely a much better alternative to not having anything at all. So at that point, it was just figuring out the logistics of moving and who I was gonna live with. And I thought that I was gonna move with my partner, but then my partner ended up not being able to move. So I was like, okay, I have to find roommates. And moving is really complicated. It's a lot. But eventually I did figure it out, and I was applying to personal training jobs down here as well, but nothing really worked out. I do recall applying to this one gym where the owner was just so fucking greedy, and she was charging like $100 per person per group class. And so per group class, she was making several hundreds of dollars and she wanted to pay me barely over minimum wage. I was just like, I cannot believe the greed right now. I literally just left a corporate nightmare where people exhibited the same type of greed, and I don't want to work for you. And I think because I saw that and because I felt that way, I sabotaged the job interview process. And so she didn't hire me. And I was like, okay, fuck you then. And so that basically pushed me to build my own gym, because luckily enough, the place that I ended up renting with the two girls that I found on Facebook to be my roommates, it had a garage. So I was like, I'm going to become a freelance trainer and I'm going to advertise my services and I'm going to find people to train. And that's exactly what I did. It took several months, but I built myself an income stream here as a personal trainer. I trained people out of my garage. And I was in a position where I felt like I really had to figure something out because I didn't know how long it was gonna take me to book my first acting gig. Like, I was submitting like crazy. But guess what? I literally booked my first job within a week of moving here. It was a modeling gig, it was a photo shoot, and I booked my first gig within a week. And that is how you know something is so aligned. When all the stars aligned and you're meant to do something and your destiny is waiting for you there, like, it just works out so easily. And I had an incredible, incredible first year here in LA. I started booking and the personal training started taking off. And since then, there have been ebbs and flows, of course, as with any self-employment situation. But I have been sustaining myself and I've only had to dig into my savings a few times. I can count the number of times I had to dig into my savings on one hand. And so I've been able to basically sustain myself in this new life for the past 2 years now. And so I just want this story to be proof that it is possible to go for your dreams and be happy, and you don't have to work a 9 to 5. Anything is possible if you just believe in yourself and if you just have the courage to go for it.